Okay, so we'll get started on page 632 here in a moment, but regardless of what you think about plants, okay, it's still obviously one of the probably the biggest agricultural export in our state, maybe second to, or third maybe, to other products for agriculture. What else do we make here in South Dakota? But a little more specific. Okay, beef and, of course, pork. Okay. Now, as far as poultry is concerned, we really don't have anything close by, at least not that I'm aware. But and maybe there probably is some maybe places on a farm that has quite a few chickens or turkeys, but nothing to where we're looking at dairy farmers or cattle farmers with 1,600 head. Or what about what? Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Yeah, and that's true. I said I'm sure there's some places out there, but for the average farm, they're either going to be corn and soybeans or they're going to be livestock. And of course there are some have both. Okay, so but this is actually probably going to be voted on again, Amendment A. Whether you agree with it or don't, it's one of the things that has passed, but I think our local government has said we want to get this right. Okay, so does anyone know what Amendment A refers to?
The right to bear arms.
No, that is the Second Amendment.
Freedom of speech, religion, and...
No, now you're talking about the Bill of Rights. This is not the Bill of Rights. This is a local issue. Amendment A. Like I said, our local government, I believe, is trying to make sure that we pass the reform on marijuana. It is legal in our state. But up until recently, recreational marijuana has not been allowed. Okay? But you can have medicinal marijuana. What does that mean? Does anyone know? Just take a guess if you don't know.
It doesn't, not medical.
Oh, it probably was. Medical marijuana. That is for medicinal purposes. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I'm trying to. Okay? So one of the things that you're going to have to decide in 3 years, 2 years maybe, I don't know, depends upon what your age is and when your birthday is. Once you turn 18, I believe you do have that right, should this pass, to have recreational marijuana. But keep in mind, you only have one ticket in this life. They're obviously, once we make it through this year, you can't go back and do your sophomore. You can't do your freshman year over. Well, I suppose you could, but you're probably not going to do that. Okay? So I think you would agree, if that's what you choose, well then, I don't know, that's your choice to make. It's not anybody else's to. But I don't know, there's maybe restrictions that we're still trying to put on there. That's why we're still working on, not me, but working on Amendment A. Okay, so I've got some of this up here for you. I'll hand these out. We'll see if you remember some of the high points and if you might agree with some of those. Okay, so on page 632, plant cells and tissues. And I know it's plants. You probably talked about them in elementary, you talked about them in middle school, now here we are in high school. It's come full circle. Okay, but one of the things I think that you would agree with, if you're thirsty, which a lot of you are because you've got your own water bottles. Heck, I even got my own water bottle here too, even entire jugs of that. You're thirsty, so you go to the fountain, fill your bottle up, and get something to drink. It's pretty hard for a plant to do that, of course. And especially if you are a cactus, or if it's not cactuses, is it cacti? So cacti, okay, which of course you need to get every drop of water available that you can. But nature chose those nature chose those organisms to live where they do. Okay, they're not heterotrophs. What does it mean to be a heterotroph? It's something that they're not. You're hungry, you go out onto the lunchroom, or if you're at home, you do maybe a bag of chips or something to that effect. Plants are not heterotrophs, they're autotrophs, which means what? Yeah, they make their own food. Wouldn't that be kind of neat? But then maybe some of you think you already are, because you're already so sweet, just like making your own sugars. Okay, all right. It's not for me to say, it's only for you people to say. Okay, page 632, plant cells and tissues. What is one of the aspects that would stick out in your mind that differs plant cells from animal cells? To me, this is one of the most obvious. Actually, there's two things. Plants have a cell wall. That's what I was thinking of, but there's also another aspect. Say that again? Exactly. What is chlorophyll, though? Yeah, majority of them are green in color. Two things that would differentiate plant cells from animal cells. All right, page 632. You can identify a typical plant cell like one by the presence of a cell wall and large central vacuole. Also, plant cells have chloroplasts. Did you know that already, or did you just read that ahead? Okay, you remember that. Okay, very good. However, there are many different types of plant cells, each with one or more adaptations that enables it to carry out specific functions. 3 types of plant cells from most plant tissues. Together, they provide storage and food production, strength, flexibility, and support. That's one of the aspects that I still think is really, really crazy. Has anyone been to Northern California? Is it the Sierra Mountains? That maybe, my geography is terrible. But there's specific types of trees that you'd find out in California that when you stand by them, you are looking up and up and up, about 300 feet. Redwoods and sequoias and giant sequoias. Okay? How is it that something that tall does not catch a lot of wind and topple over? Well, it's because of what makes up the stems and leaves of those structures. Okay? So, with that, parenchyma cells. Most flexible, thin-walled cells found throughout a plant are parenchyma cells. They are the basis for many plant structures. They are the basis for many plant structures and are capable of a wide range of functions, including storage, photosynthesis, gas exchange, and protection. These cells are spherical in shape, and their cell walls flatten when they are packed tightly together, as shown in the table below. An important trait of parenchyma cells is they can undergo cell division when mature. When a plant is damaged, parenchyma cells divide to help repair it. Okay? Depending upon the function of parenchyma cells, can have special features. Some parenchyma cells have chloroplasts, also shown in Table 1. These cells often are found in leaves and green stems and can carry on photosynthesis producing glucose. Some parenchyma cells, such as those found in the roots and fruits, have large central vacuoles that can store substances such as starch, water, or oils. Of course, when we're talking about storage of water with some types of fruits, obviously what comes to mind is watermelon. We're not quite in that season yet, So maybe by middle of June, maybe you have more watermelon delivered to, of course you can get watermelon now, but it's going to cost more because they're not in season, I believe. That's what my perception would be. They're not in season for being locally, not locally grown, but brought into the area, if you want to call it that. Okay, collenchyma cells. If you've ever eaten celery, you might be familiar with collenchyma cells. These cells make up those long strings that you can pull from a celery stalk. Collenchyma cells are plant cells that often elongate and occur in long strands or cylinders that provide support for surrounding cells, as shown in Table 1. Collenchyma cells can have unevenly thickened cell walls. As collenchyma cell grows, the thinner portions of the cell will expand. Because of this growth pattern, collenchyma cells are flexible and can stretch, which enables plants to bend without breaking. Like parenchyma cells, collenchyma cells retain the ability to undergo cell division when mature. Okay. And finally, sclerenchyma cells. Unlike parenchyma and collenchyma cells, are plant cells that lack a cytoplasm and other living components when they are mature, but their thick, rigid cell walls remain. These cells provide support for a plant, and some are used for transporting materials within the plant. Sclerenchyma cells make up most of the wood we use for shelter, fuel, and paper products. Okay, we're not going to go into the different types of sclerenchyma cells, so we'll go ahead and turn the page. Actually, 2 pages, because I want to talk about dermal tissue. And then we're just going to get down 2 paragraphs, and then that's it for today. Okay, dermal tissue and the epidermis. Okay, the layer cells that makes up the outer covering on a plant cell is dermal tissue, is also called the epidermis. Same as in animals, humans, the epidermis is the outer covering. Cells of the epidermis enable pieces of the jigsaw puzzle with interlocking ridges and dips, as shown in Figure 4. Most epidermal cells can secrete fatty substances that forms the cuticle. You might recall that the cuticle helps reduce water loss from plants by showing evaporation. The cuticle can also help prevent bacteria and other other disease-causing organisms from entering the plant. Okay, a stomata. Plants can have several adaptations of their epidermis. Recall that the epidermis of most leaves and some green stems have stomata, small openings through which carbon dioxide, water, oxygen, and other gases pass. These 2 cells form a stoma or guard cell. Changes in the shapes of guard cells result in opening and closing of stomata as shown. So one of the things that happens, especially you could say late June, July, and I suppose in August when it comes to soybeans, those might have a tougher time than what corn does. Okay, the reason I believe that is until the plumage starts to spread, that sunlight is bearing down on those plants. But one of the things that corn does is as it grows, what do the leaves start to do? Yeah, they start to, would you say, I don't want to say branch out. What's a better term? Yeah, did you say spread? Yeah, they start to spread out. Once it does that, it starts to create shade for the next row over. Okay, so when that happens, you're just getting more of a shading effect. Other than that, these guard cells will open and close. They're shut during the day. Okay? So, what is it that is not allowed to seep out of that plant if these guard cells in this stomata are closed? It's not taking in carbon dioxide and it's not releasing oxygen, but more importantly, it's not losing something, moisture or water. Okay, so then at night, these can tend to open up again. Okay, And when that happens, it can take in carbon dioxide. And since it didn't lose that water during the day, it can continually make even sugars for itself at night in a process called the Kelvin cycle. Okay? There's a set of reactions we're going to talk about, light reactions and dark reactions, which is also known as the Kelvin cycle. But that's for another time. Okay, so I'm going to hand these out. There's lots of vocab terms. You'll have the opportunity to work on them today. And very similar, we'll do something like this tomorrow as well. So be back in just a moment. So as you look, we just read through parts of this section. It should say chapter 22. I got 29 on here. That's just an error. It's actually chapter 22. So you can see we just read through the 3 different types of cells, okay? And like parenchyma, as you can see, those are tightly packed together. They're not cube-shaped. They're actually spherical in shape, okay? Involved in metabolic function, so they're going to have ability to make sugars for itself because it says storage of water, nutrients, and healing. In order to do that, you'd have to have special types of cells that would function in photosynthesis, and that's what parenchyma cells do. Collenchyma cells, okay, are just like, have a similar function to parenchyma ones. They provide support, okay. And since it says they specialize in supporting regions of the plant that are lengthening, where do plants lengthen the most, do you think? In the roots, the leaves, or the stems? In the stems. That's where you'd find the majority of collenchyma cells then. Okay. And then the third type is cells that really don't grow that much because they lack the different types of structures needed, like a cytoplasm and other living components. Okay. So just like we said, animals and humans have an epidermis. Well, so do plants. Okay. And it just prevents things from going in and out of there that they need for themselves. Okay. So that's all I've got. We will pick up with this again tomorrow. The due date for this vocabulary, I really don't have one, but if you think you really need to have that, I would say maybe March 10th, okay? So that's a week from this Thursday. That's a day before your 3-day weekend. So, because this, a week from this Friday is the 11th, that's one of your spring break days. So, we'll see if it's spring at that time. Okay, we'll catch up to you next time.